Welcome to Growth Marketing Camp, where we sit down with our favorite marketers to demystify growth and give you the insights to help turn your next campaign into a major success. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to another episode of Growth Marketing Camp. I'm excited to be joined by Ammon Brown, whose credits we're going to get to shortly here. But just to set the stage, Ammon, I am fully expecting at least one excellent pun in this interview, okay? LinkedIn description says you're jack of all trades, master of pun. You got to sneak it some way into the interview, okay?
That was it right there.
That's right. Jack of all trades, master of pun. All right, so we're expecting a little bit more. I love it. So, Ammon, you come from a long history in marketing and in growth. At Google in 2004, several agencies, and then maybe what's most fascinating to me as kind of a fellow entrepreneur is you founded a social sharing software company that was acquired by ad shoppers. And now most recently, you're the VP of growth at what I'll call the incredibly domain name rich x.ai. Done some really cool things in marketing, Ammon. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us. First question, have you ever had a role you weren't excited about getting out of bed for? Because those sound like some pretty cool things.
I would say yes, because every role has days where you're not excited to get out of bed. For myself, whenever I feel like a role is stagnating or getting a little bit narrow in scope, that's when I start getting bored and checking out. But as long as I've got a lot of different things to fill my day, then I'm raring to go every morning.
I love it. Yeah. And you have an energy. I can just tell you bring that to the team. So that's awesome. What was the role, let's say, where you had the richest learning experience? Because you've been at all kinds of different places. My guess, agency life, but I'm interested to hear, where did you have the most, rich learning experience?
I think it really varies. It depends on what you're trying to learn. If you're trying to learn self-sufficiency while being a solo entrepreneur and growing a company is a totally different ballgame than fitting into a large organization. I think that I would say probably sales jobs early on teach you the most, because you really have to think on your feet. You really have to be talking the talk to prospects. You really need to kind of understand the pain of the marketplace. And that really gives you a lot of tools that you can leverage later on in totally different disciplines, just being able to talk to people.
Yeah, love that. Well, thinking about x.ai right now and the company that you're currently heading growth for with, so many potential customers, right? This is a calendaring tool above, the average calendaring tools capabilities. But thinking about the different types of people that you can sell this offering to and then you can target with your marketing, are there particular areas of focus for you guys right now? Like any segments or sizes of companies or things that you look at?
Yeah, it's interesting because people say, who's your target market? And I'm like, I don't know, everybody that schedules a meeting, you got a calendar, don't you? What we're finding is that we're really successful with what we call individuals and tiny teams. And that doesn't necessarily mean tiny companies, because we have customers across the Fortune 500. We have customers who are solo entrepreneurs. It's really just, when someone really feels scheduling pain, they adopt the platform. And it's just that simple. And then as they schedule meetings with other people, it grows through the organization, and eventually we're signing an enterprise contract with them. So it's sort of a bottoms up approach, but there's not really any single profile of individual user that we specifically and explicitly target. We do have a number of personas that we're saying, real estate agents have a great deal of scheduling pain, especially right now. They can't do in-house open houses, things like that. And entrepreneurs, especially at small companies, love us because they're just resource constrained, and scheduling meetings chews up hours every week.
Yeah. Oh, that makes perfect sense. I love that idea. And we're going to get into sort of this groundswell product-led growth concept as we talk about your campaign focus. Do you have any example, maybe some customers who we would have heard of, or somebody that you like to talk about, like a particularly unique use case?
One that I really like recently is a company called Seesaw. They are an app for schools, for teachers, parents, administrators to all communicate within the app. It's a great app. They're using it for sort of just-in-time support. So they're building these round-robin scheduling pages for their support teams. And a teacher says, well, I'm stuck, I don't know how to use the app. They schedule a 15-minute call and they're on a Zoom moments later with a support rep.
Oh, interesting.
So they're sort of taking that as a use case, and they're across multiple time zones. And so managing it was kind of a headache, and they're being pretty successful with the system now.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I like that. That's not what I expected. I love it. Well, let's break down your campaign, which, kind of from our pre-show conversation here, isn't the traditional sense of like, hey, we paid this much in these channels to advertise for this period of time and drove this many signups. But you guys are going about it in a different way. You're thinking about this from a product-led growth standpoint. What does that mean to you, first of all? What does it mean to drive growth through the product?
Well, we're in a very lucky spot. We have what I would refer to as inherent virality. Simply because if I'm scheduling a meeting, I'm usually not doing it with just myself. So we have this natural sort of outbound power that people are scheduling meetings with one or more or dozens of other people. And so each person who has a meeting scheduled with them via our system, whether it's over email with our AI or whether through one of our calendar pages, they're being exposed to our platform. And so with that natural exposure, we're able to try to build in loops and try to really nail that experience for the guest, because if it works really well for them and if we can blow their mind, they're going to sign up immediately. And so, we're really just sort of leveraging that inherent outreach that exists by the nature of what we do. I would think of it as kind of analogous to DocuSign or companies like that, where you don't just sign your own contracts, you need to share it with someone else. And you can, as long as you nail that experience and make it just so flawless and dead simple, then people are going to love you and they're going to eventually pay you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned earlier that you start sometimes with small teams within larger organizations, and maybe automatically you eventually arrive at this enterprise contract. But even with the virality of the product, I imagine that doesn't just happen in and of itself. Like, nobody's asking you for a contract to sign 1,000 seats of x.ai. At what point does that get transitioned over to a sales representative? At what point are you going from like, hey, we have a lot of users at this company to maybe somebody ought to reach out and like group these together and start talking about larger use cases?
It really depends on the customer's needs. In the case of Seesaw that I mentioned, we have a large bank here in the US as well. When someone says, oh, wow, this is working really well, I want to roll this out to a larger team. At that point, they usually contact us because now you're in the territory of, well, these people aren't adopting it immediately just to solve their own pain. It's sort of an organization-wide pain. And so, there's a little bit more training and handholding that is necessarily involved because they're not just self-onboarding. With that said, we do try to make it as easy as possible for even a large team to onboard themselves. Obviously, we're not there, but there is an inflection point at which it's not just my tool anymore, it's now my company's tool.
Yeah.
And that can be anywhere from 5 seats to 50 to 100 seats, where they start going, well, we should probably start moving into a larger territory here.
Sure. And I imagine it could be occasionally where it's from, hey, everybody on their own credit card, happy to pay, the small fee per month that they're paying to get your access to your tool, to suddenly the whole team wants it. Now the manager's getting involved and starting to think about budgeting. And so they're probably asking for maybe a deeper dive with a sales team member. So that's more common where they're actually reaching out to you because they've gotten to that point.
Yeah, we're almost entirely, we're not almost entirely, we're entirely inbound at the moment.
Beautiful. Yeah.
We're not really doing much in the way of outbound outreach because, again, we've tried this sort of the top down where you contact the CMO, the CEO, whoever it may be, and say, roll this out to your whole organization.
Yeah.
And, unless they have a salient need that they need to fill, like their customer success team is 40 people and needs to be able to schedule amongst themselves, then you're going to have an adoption problem when you go top down with something like this.
Yeah.
And so, as we go bottoms up, we're finding that we're having much more success and we're growing more naturally, organically, and reliably.
Boy, yeah, it's an interesting insight. I'm thinking about, of course, our own company here at Opensense and some of what we do, the end users who love the capabilities, but it is not as easily installable because we install at the server level. So you have some natural advantages to your product, but you're also in a fairly competitive space, I would say. There are well-known brands who provide, at least on the surface, a very similar experience from, again, somebody looking at this and saying, okay, category, this is a calendaring tool, right? Great. I know other calendaring tools. I'm going to go look at those as well. What are some of those unique functionalities? And this isn't a product pitch, but I really want to understand from a product-led growth perspective, how do you trust your product to drive that growth? What is it that's unique about the way you've built the product that you can trust that it will actually continue to carry that out ahead of other competitors?
So I would hesitate to call it a calendaring tool because it's a scheduling tool, and
Beautiful.
we call it a scheduling engine. It's not about exposing your availability. It's about getting meetings on the calendar and getting it done. It's a fine distinction, but we have a number of ways that we approach this. So, a one-to-one meeting internally, you're going to go to Google Calendar and find a time that you're both open and just click go. A one-to-one meeting externally, you can send a calendar page. I prefer you send an x.ai calendar page. They're really beautiful and convert well.
Sure.
But then when you start getting into the territory of, well, now I have 6 people that all need to be in the room at the same time, a calendar page starts falling apart. And so our email scheduling AI is able, you just CC everybody and it will arrange the meeting on your behalf. Now, this is kind of a good segue into the product-led growth campaign that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Because when everybody involved, internal or external, has a calendar connected to x.ai or accessible to the system, it just picks a time and schedules it and puts it on everybody's calendars. And when that happens in a 6-person meeting, when I send an email and it comes back less than a minute later and says, great, it's on everybody's calendars now, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the functionality that we're really trying to expose to people, that, hey, we can do all of this negotiation in the background as long as everybody has at least a free account.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So then one of the things that you've had to enable is a free tier, some ability for people to expose their calendar to the tool so that then they're now a part of that ecosystem. They're aware of it. There's a connection there that you can leverage. I'm really curious, supposing that they have a great experience, but then they forget because they've held the meeting and something else has happened. What does the follow-up marketing look like from you guys?
By follow-up marketing, do you mean for a guest?
Yeah. Do you do anything to reach out to them, or is it just the expectation that they handle that on their own because they're so enthralled with the experience?
It's kind of an expectation that they handle it on their own. So we're very protective of the guest experience. And if you schedule a meeting with someone and then suddenly the tool that you used is emailing that guest, you're not going to be happy with us.
Yeah.
We have a little 5-star rating for guests and it hovers just shy of 5 stars all the time. And we're very protective of that. But when someone signs up for the platform, even if they're just connecting a calendar and they're not going to schedule meetings, they're just sort of a passive participant, that's fine, because that creates value for everyone else involved. So we do have a number of sort of ongoing engagement triggers. Once you sign up, we have an email that goes out the evening prior that says, here's what's coming up tomorrow. You got some conflicts. This one might need attention. This one's missing a location. So that's sort of a daily reminder of, here's all, a helpful little tool. And then we also we insert rescheduling links. So one-click reschedule on every meeting in your calendar really helps you access the tool and, re-experience that magic. If I click reschedule in a 6-person meeting and it goes, okay, cool, I just moved it to Tuesday at 2. I'm like, what? Oh, rad. So we do try to expose those features in the surface area where you're always interacting with your day regardless, which is your calendar. It's sort of the central source of truth for people.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Then now what I want to dig into is really, how do you have a part to play in that? So as a VP of growth, you also have this history that is, obviously sales and product and marketing, which all kind of plays into what you do today, I imagine, because you're kind of straddling the lines between all of those. Who are the team members that come together to make this all happen?
Good question. So it's kind of everybody. I think of growth as, it's not just straddling the line of different departments. It's its own department because it necessarily has to be. It's an amalgam of, like you said, sales, marketing, product, advertising, tech, analytics, whatever it may be. And it's always going to be just a little bit different in any organization. In my current role, it's more product heavy because, like I said, we're a very product-led growth company. And so I work closely with the product teams, with the engineers, our VP of engagement, who's awesome, as well as our CEO. So growth is kind of everybody's responsibility, and we're all sort of working together to move this thing forward. As a company, our goals are aligned in that we want to grow X amount in Y amount of time.
Fascinating. Okay. I love that idea of everybody's job is growth, right? That they're all connected. That makes a lot of sense. You guys certainly have a unique way of thinking about that. Thinking about what you're doing right now through product-led growth, are there other engines that you're tapping into outside of the product itself? Is it partnerships? What other channels are you using to promote your product currently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, product led doesn't mean product exclusively.
Yeah.
So, we have a bare bones SEM campaign that just sort of brings in a fair bit of new users. We have a very active blog that has a number of content pieces that pull things in. Our nascent API just launched with its first partner company. And so, now we're doing co-marketing with any API partners that we're working with, as well as, just the general elbow grease of, hey, schedule a meeting with us and call us up and we'll sit there and talk to you. We know it doesn't scale, but it really helps. And then I also host just little sort of demo webinars twice a week. And, people show up for those frequently just to get an orientation for the platform. But for me, it's really useful because I understand how people are using it and what they need out of it. So there's a lot of customer communication, there's a lot of traditional channels, but then there's a great deal of sort of product optimization to really get people coming through the product itself.
I love the idea of having more conversations with those users and learning about that, which I'm sure influences product, I'm sure influences content. Does what you see happening from an analytics perspective in the product also influence what you're doing on the content, the marketing side, kind of outside of the product?
100%, yeah.
What are maybe a couple of examples of places where you've seen something in the product that's educated you on ways you should be marketing differently?
Well, so just today I was looking, hunting for new API partners. And so I went and looked at our referrals in Google Analytics and said, okay, who wrote content about us that is sending clicks over to us from their blog? And, obviously Zapier's at the top, they wrote up a nice article on us, but then there's a few others who are adjacent to your business, but they're not competitors because a competitor wouldn't do that. And so that's a really good source of potential partners there.
Yeah.
But then we'll also do things like, we have Google Analytics events and other things throughout the product. And, if we're optimizing a CTA within the product, then we're watching that very closely and making sure that, after someone schedules a meeting, if they came through a calendar page, we should probably try to show them this message that says, get your own free calendar pages versus get your own scheduling AI, for instance.
Got it.
So there's a lot of things like that where the data is coming in from the product and it's helping inform that. But then, there's the general traditional types of things where you're looking at the traffic that you're getting from SEO and using that to sort of go buy some keywords across Google.
That makes sense. Now, thinking about, just because there's so much collaboration that obviously happens, and you guys are a smaller team for what you're capable of doing, I imagine that there are some very specific people who have to be involved doing different things. Is it a growth department? Is it a marketing department? How do you think about that? Do you have specifically a marketing department within growth, or is it all kind of just one big happy family?
It's all kind of just one big happy family. I mean, we all have our titles, but then it's really just, I work with our head of product day in, day out. I work with our head of engagement. I work with, pretty much whatever tools you need to get things done. I might be pairing with an engineer to go through and wire up some new analytics hook or put something in place. So it's really, you just draw from whatever tools you need to actually accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting for our audience because we've had a lot of very traditional marketing structure folks on the show. I mean, I can think of like a friend of mine, Kevin Babowski, who talked about, we pick a channel, we do a great job, we put a director over, we've got a manager, and we've got, a couple of folks executing at the bottom of that funnel, if you will, and that structure. And you're saying, hey, we're one happy family. We're all working and talking together and figuring this thing out together. I mean, it's beautiful. It's very different. It really stands out.
It works well when you have a team that's comfortable with sort of figuring it out as you go, with a frenetic pace of test, measure, repeat. I think when you're under 50 people startup land, it's easier to do things this way.
Yeah.
Once you start growing larger, I think it becomes difficult to say, well, I need 2 engineers on that. It's like, whoa, slow down there. They're over there on that project. But when the entire company is still a small team and they're fully aligned on what the goals are and then fully aligned on how to get there, then, everybody's kind of on board.
Yeah. Then thinking about those goals, because you mentioned them, how do you set them? I mean, traditionally, maybe a CEO says, here's our objectives. Hey, VP of marketing, how are you going to accomplish this from an MQL standpoint, sales leaders, how are we going to accomplish this from a closed won revenue? And it seems very structured and obvious, who's going to do what in terms of planning for those goals. How do you guys think about that today?
Well, there's really two different types of goals, all of which feed the sort of our North Star metrics. So right now we're focused on growing our monthly recurring revenue. That's the bottom line. And then there's a lot of different ways to do that, but that sort of gets fed by monthly meetings scheduled. So the more meetings get scheduled, the more people are exposed, the more people will sign up. A certain predictable percentage of them are going to pay us. But then each individual project or each individual product launch might have its own goals attached to it. So, if we're pushing a particular top of funnel type of tidbit into the product, then that might have a goal attached to, well, we want a bunch of signups out of that. It's not necessarily a revenue driver, but we know that revenue will come out further down the funnel because, again, we convert at a predictable rate. And so each project might have slightly different metrics and goals attached, and they might miss.
Yeah.
But
okay.
In aggregate, they all kind of bubble up to that revenue driver.
Okay, that makes sense. You have a North Star. You guys are building other goals off of that. That makes perfect sense. And I guess thinking about what you've done in product-led growth, or thinking about the way that you guys are growing today, is this influencing anything you're planning to do in the future, right? Typically, when we talk to a guest, they've done a very specific campaign that is now influencing other campaigns. Are there things that you're learning today that are going to influence the way that you're going to market in the future, you think?
Yes. So we have this notion of the scheduling network where you can invite people to connect their calendars so that now you can schedule those instant meetings that I was talking about. And there's a lot of value in that. We, by we, I mean me and all of us, I guess, we want to do more with that because that was sort of put together as a hack. We said, well, we have this instant background scheduling. It's really cool. It's mind-blowing when it happens to people. Let's let them, now that we have a free version, let them just connect with people and then just say that person, click, meet, go.
Yeah.
And it's been very successful. People are getting value out of it. And so exposing that value in more places, being able to show you that, hey, these 6 contacts and you're all available Tuesday at 1. Do you want to book that? Surfacing those types of moments to the customer where they're like, holy shit, you can do that? Cool. That's sort of pushing us in a direction towards adding more value to having a contact within the network, because that helps solidify our position, but it also helps add value to our customers. If I can insta schedule with you, why wouldn't I? Versus sending an email and having you click on my link or have the AI start sending you my times and those sorts of things. Just book it instantly and move on. Show up at the meeting and smile.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, there's going to be some folks here who are listening or maybe watching, and they see an opportunity to maybe pivot. They haven't been so product-led, growth-minded, and now they're thinking, hey, that's inspiring. There's an idea, but how do they start that conversation? And obviously, it seems like from the very beginning, x.ai, that's been a part of your company's DNA. But let's suppose it's not. Do you have any advice for those who are thinking, man, maybe we can do something with the product because there is some inherent potential virality, but we're not doing it today? How do you think they could start that conversation?
I think you really want to start with sort of the overall customer and guest experience. So if someone's using a product, whether it's a radio flyer wagon or whether it's scheduling software, if they really like it, if it's helping them, if their experience is a positive one, then they're incentivized to talk about it.
Sure.
And it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. I talked to a friend's company a while back, and they were just kind of dabbling with a freemium product, a free version of their product. And you kind of have to trust that your product is good enough that people are going to have a good enough experience when you open the doors that they're going to stay put.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding is working for us. For them, they kind of open the doors and then it inspired them. And they said, wow, okay, well, now that it's free, we can still upgrade at a certain predictable rate, and they're actually doing better that way. But again, you want to start with what value customers are getting, especially what value they're getting out of sharing it. And it's not necessarily monetary. I don't think that giving people cash kickbacks is always the best way to go.
Yeah.
It's not the best motivator, but there's motivators like, oh, hey, this is a really exclusive club. Like, this app Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Oh, you need an invite. It's only special people are allowed in. It's like, you're going to start building this desire to be in the cool kids club.
Yep.
There's other ways of just saying, oh, hey, look at this really cool software. I love scheduling meetings with people, and I just mention the scheduler, say meet, send, and I'm like, look how cool that was. And so there's kind of this cachet to doing certain things with certain products. Nobody spends $10,000 for a handbag just because it's worth $10,000. They spend that because it says something. It's cool. Yeah. So when you have those types of experiences and you have that type of product love, then you can start leveraging that in subtle ways or even blatant ways with like a referral program.
I like that. Okay. That's useful. I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you coming on and being willing to do something maybe a little outside the norm in terms of talking about growth, because this is a really different way of looking at it. It is a campaign. You're turning your product into something that drives growth. And it's exciting to hear how you're fine tuning that as you go. Talk to me about, let's say folks want to learn, more about you, the company, and maybe even try out the tool themselves. Where should they go? Obviously the name x.ai, that's where you're going to go on the website. Anywhere else they should be paying attention to?
Well, we did just launch some features in the Newton email client, but really just going to x.ai I hope it's sufficiently self-explanatory. If not, then I'm not doing my job very well. But we've been around for a couple of years. There's tons of content out there talking about who we are and what we are. Our product has changed dramatically over the last just 2 years that I've been with the company.
Okay.
And so, it's a completely different thing. If somebody tried it 5 years ago, very different experience. But really, like anything that has a free version, come in, sign up, connect to calendar. If you don't like it, no harm, no foul. Yeah, I think you will, but I'm highly biased.
That's right. Well, then last couple of questions here before I let you go, because I appreciate you bringing all this positive energy and these great ideas to the show. Tell me, who are some other marketers who you're looking up to that we should be paying attention to? And frankly, they don't have to be marketers. Who are some folks out there that you think have been inspiring you on your journey?
I've had a number of CEOs that I really appreciate. Our current CEO, Dennis. If you think I'm bringing positive energy, you should talk to Dennis sometime.
Okay.
And I just, it's not necessarily always a skill set that you look up to. It's sort of an approach, just a general mindset of, Dennis has that. There's a number of other folks whose names I'm just going to utterly blank on, but just that mindset of, well, I don't know how to do it, but we can certainly figure it out. So let's apply ourselves and we'll come out the other end just fine. I'll call out Dennis's name just for that one, but
Beautiful. Well, we'll make sure to share some links to Dennis. That's great. And I guess last question here, thinking about what growth means to you and the way that you're doing it, is there anything that you can think of that the average growth marketer that we're out there trying to do that we should stop doing, or maybe that we're not yet doing that we should start doing?
Yes, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times you can start over optimizing the same thing. Meaning that, the more you optimize that one landing page, the more you try to get that much more performance out of this thing, eventually you're going to end up with just a page with a giant orange button on it, because that's the most effective thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's this iterative experimentation that is just in the DNA of growth marketing, where you're trying things, measuring it. If it works, great, try something else. But it can sort of get you down into these little silos where you're now in the land of, I'm just optimizing the CTAs on my blog posts. Versus sometimes you need to step back and say, wait a second, you know what? People are out there talking about our product. Why don't we give them a bullhorn on Twitter? And this is just me pulling things out of thin air.
Yeah.
But, just trying some wild, crazy ideas. And I think that throwing brand new things out there that are probably going to fail, you might be surprised from time to time. But if you just keep iterating on the same set of, levers that you're pulling, then you might miss some interesting opportunities. The other big one, and I think a lot of people say this and they're right, is talk to customers. It's just, I'm on a round robin calendar page with Dennis and a couple of other people. And anyone who comes to request a solutions call is going to end up with any one of us. You could end up talking to the CEO. on what is essentially like a troubleshooting call. And that just keeps you so close to and in tune with the way that people are using your product that you can sort of build to that. And then finally, use your own product. I use mine religiously. If you schedule a meeting with me not using x.ai, I kind of get mad, not because I work here, but because it's so much more efficient. Why wouldn't you just do that? It's like someone faxed me a contract and said, can you sign this and fax it back? I'm like, have you not heard of DocuSign? What's wrong with you? When you're using your product to that extent and you're in that sort of how dare you not use it territory, then you know that you're doing something right.
Fascinating. I love that. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Well, we really appreciate being on the show, Ammon. Thanks for bringing all these ideas. Thanks for sharing your version of product-led growth. I'm sure we will be back in touch with you for more of this, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sure thing. And I'll come prepared with puns next time.
Very good.
Very good. All right. Hey, Rex, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening to Growth Marketing Camp. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would give it a quick 5-star rating or share it with a friend or colleague looking to get a little more inspiration for their next campaign. If you want to learn more about the company behind the show, head to opensense.com. That's OPENSENSE.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.